Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I am joined by John Paul Mason. We are talking all things Celtic. JP, since you were last on, we've kept the winning run up. Obviously, we're going to St Johnstone at the weekend. Just, we'll be talking about that. With one eye, and some people don't like to do this, with one eye on Borussia Dortmund. But I think that with a fixture of that type, JP, you've really got to think about 2 games ahead. You know, going into the St Johnstone game with the lineup and how you're going to select your starting 11. I do think you do that with Borussia Dortmund in mind. What's your take?
Well, you have to. I mean, I've spoken about it before. Like, the best managers are the best snooker players, where they're thinking, 2-3 shots ahead rather than. Obviously, you've got to concentrate on the ball you're going to try and pop, but you've got to think about what's happening after that. Some concerns over the Carter-Vickers injury as well, and he has to be protected, I would say, because you would think we would be able to get away with playing somebody else in his place if it meant that he was going to make Dortmund. I would really, really hope that we could, because we were only just saying last week or something about the Slovan Bratislava game that for once we seem to be going into a game of that magnitude with everybody available, and no injuries and all the rest of it, and then it just shows you how easy things can change. Suddenly you're potentially without your first choice centre half for an away game in the league, which is still crucial, but then follow that up very closely with the Dortmund game, and there's question marks over who goes in his place. So I mean, I don't know who you would suggest, but I googled Navrotsky just to see what his preferred foot was. He is a right-footed centre half, so the fact that he even got any game time at all, like, I turned around and said to the guy behind me, I was like, "Oh my God, he's alive!"
Yes,
it's
all at the club.
But has he got a future at the club? I mean, is he going to be gone in January? Is there any sort of look? I don't think anyone's asked that question of Brendan Rodgers, like where Mike Navrotsky fits in this whole puzzle of putting a team together.
The thing for me, and I want to talk about Carter-Vickers because it is one thing that I'm concerned about, his fitness. Navrotsky's behind Liam Scales, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Stephen Welsh, Austin Trusty. So he's the 5th choice. So he comes on at the weekend there, JP, and we started without our first 2 choice centre-backs, and he's still on the bench. So he's our 5th choice. I think it's a situation we're in whereby, very similar to, let's say, maybe Odin Holm, whereby he's there for the bodies. But if you can get an upgrade or an improvement on him, you will, and then you'll probably move him on. There's another discussion around Palma. I've seen some of the comments on the blogs, etc., saying that there's been a pile-on in relation to Palma. And I think that we've got to try and differentiate between 2 things here, JP. When you are commenting on the performance of the team after every single game, and we do it live as soon as the whistle blows, you're also commenting on things that didn't go so well. And often that is the form of individual players. So it's nothing personal. You're not piling on. I would love to see Palma going back to the form that he was shown probably this time last year. I would love that. I would love Navrotsky to show the potential that forced Celtic to sign him for best part of £4.5 million. But if they're bit part players and they're getting opportunities and they're not taking the opportunities, it's only fair as a supporter to comment on that. And I don't think that has ever changed. I think that's been the case at the work on the Monday, in the supporters' buses going home from the games, in the boozers after the matches. It's always been the way. But it seems as though now that we've got a platform where it's new media, if you like, JP, it's as if we have to be censored in that respect. Nobody's having a go at Palmer for the sake of it. He was poor at the weekend.
There's no doubt about it. He was, and he was a contributing factor to us being 2-1 down, because if he'd have been playing better along with others, it would have been 2-1 to us rather than being 2-1 down. Like, I know he had a new start behind him, so I guess you've got to cut both of them a bit of slack because of that, because it's not as Baye was playing behind Maeda or Taylor was playing behind Palma. Neither of that was the case. So but it's still about the individual and the individual's decision making, and too often his decision making was wrong. And I know it was a big game for Falkirk, and obviously they were completely up for it and everything else, and probably playing above themselves to a certain extent. But you then expect the Celtic players to play above themselves as well, and that includes Palmer, and he's an attacking left-sided winger, and he had a tall centre half up top who he was charged with giving distribution to, and didn't really. I mean, Ida wasn't getting any change out of either of the wingers really. James Forrest put work in, but didn't get much joy on that side. And it took the late intervention of Nicholas Kuhn, who to come on and get 2 goals and 2 assists is kind of wild stats, really. I mean, regardless of the opposition, you still got to come on and do it. And there's been plenty of times we've been sitting there at Celtic Park and brought on decent substitutes, and the other team have still managed to stodgily hold out for a draw or a victory. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure where Palmer fits in the bigger picture going forward, because I mean, somebody said behind me, that's the last time you'll see him in a Celtic shirt, and I thought that was a bit over the top. It may be the last time he starts for quite some time though, and let's be realistic. Why would he? How could he possibly lay claim to starting over Daisen Maeda? There's absolutely no chance.
No chance. Yeah. And he needs to show some resilience, according to his Instagram, JP, and maybe look at Kuhn as an example. There's a player who I reckon for the period from January to the end of the season wasn't up to scratch. We know that there were mitigating circumstances around his fitness, but he got a hard time. He got a hard time, and a lot of the commenters and contributors at Acsom were giving him a hard time. But what he did is he just knuckled down, didn't he? He knuckled down, self-belief, was given an opportunity and took it. And I think you're right. With Palmer, he was given an opportunity and didn't, to the point where we were talking about where Nawrocki is in the pecking order. Is Palmer below Yang for you at the moment? Because Yang came on and at least made a positive impression.
Yeah, I kind of wanted Yang to do something, because I knew that was a platform for him to show what he can do, and maybe having sat there watching the game as a spectator, but a spectator with a football brain, you'd think maybe he would identify weaknesses in the Falkirk team, see if somebody was tiring, to go at them a bit harder and try and, leave them for dust, which he did, and obviously the keeper pulled off a good save from him. So I didn't think he was terrible. Some people were saying he was excellent. I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, I mean, all the subs made an impact in their own way. Like Greg Taylor obviously coming in just gives you a bit more confidence at that place in the park, and obviously Hengels as well. It just comes in and completely and utterly. I mean, the Falkirk players at that point must have been like we're knackered. They've just brought in an £11 million player who has been widely touted as one of the best signings we've ever made, even at this early stage. So there must have been a bit of trepidation on their part. And obviously, as we saw, the quality combined to score the goals that we needed to get through. So, yeah, it was a missed opportunity, I think, for some. I think Ben Rodgers admitted he had to play the players, because you're never going to know what they can do if you don't play them. They're just going to be unknown quantities if they're sitting kicking their heels. So, a bit of criticism for Trusty as well, which I thought was a bit harsh as well. I mean, I don't really know what the guy did massively wrong. It was his first start. He was soft, I think, for the was the first goal, the one where
opening goal, yeah,
the opening goal. I've still not seen it back. I've only seen the Celtic goals. I'll need to see this, because if you watched it back, did the guy grab him and then let him go, and then he had the opportunity to get the ball, or what happened?
That's a big argument, I guess. I think I was so frustrated at the time that I felt he was out-muscled. A lot of people in the comments, and even if I just asked now, what do you think in the comments? A lot of people were saying he was fouled, and it was a wee bit unfair on him. And I think even if he's fouled, JP, right, even if he's been held back, I think he needs to show a wee bit more strength.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to go studs up on Valle or indeed Trusty. I just think, you know what, the guys haven't played, and they've not played within that defence as well that was cobbled together.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see them individually introduced to the strongest start 11, so that they're brought in as the one change rather than 8 changes in the team. It's all a wee bit of a mismatch. There isn't really a fluid game plan. Everybody's getting to know each other. I'd like to see the two of them, and I'm not prepared to write them off, especially with Trusty. I mean, we spent £6 million on this guy, you know, which is a lot of money for Celtic. Even this is the bracket we were talking about, JP, wasn't it? Get out of the 1 to 4.5 million bracket. Let's get into the next bracket. And he's in that in terms of how much he's cost. So I'm not willing to write any of those two guys off. But what I would say about Valle, I thought on the ball, I thought he was very good. And, you know, for the Bernardo goal, he played his part in 2 different phases of that play. So in the build-up play between him, McGregor and Hatate, he's part of retaining the possession. And then when Hatate eventually makes that defence splitting pass, the risky pass, it's Valle who gets the lay on with the head. And I think it was a very good wee nod on. So
I
cushioned it. It was controlled.
The ground for me, so it all happened so fast. I didn't actually see what happened until I saw the replay, and then, you know, he obviously knew Bernardo was there to sort of lay it off for him. So yeah, guys, very, very young. Barcelona fans apparently were a bit up in arms about him coming here. You've got to give him a chance and let him give him a game with Maeda in front of him. Put it that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and see how he gets on there, because I think he'd be a lot more comfortable with someone of that speed and intensity in front of him just to help him out.
Definitely, and I think it also probably fed into the performance of Hatate. The fact that he's got Palma, Valle, and on the left of the central defence, Trusty. You know, it was a bit for me a bit of a mismatch, and Hatate's form probably suffered a wee bit as well. So I wasn't willing to go over the board with regards to Hatate's performance. And we're not ignoring the fact that we're playing St Johnstone this weekend. We're going to be speaking about that, but with one eye on Dortmund. And obviously, I like to talk to JP about European endeavours, because you've had a few. You've had a few yourself. And obviously, you've got the Dortmund scarf behind you. Is there a story? There's normally a story behind these things with you, JP, where you managed to pick these things up. Is there a story behind that?
There is, yeah. And there's a reason why I've got that strip up as well. Basically, I've always kind of liked Borussia Dortmund because of the fact that we played them in the UEFA Cup in the early 90s. There was a kind of glamour about the fact that we were playing a big team. We perennially didn't play in my early time supporting Celtic. The majority of the teams that we played in that period were never big European teams, were they? They were always, because we always got teams in the early rounds of the UEFA Cup, and they tended to be a bit
German Lekeren, Neuchâtel Xamax,
young boys, Bern, who have got in obviously, and I don't know. There was we got Hamburg. I guess that was my first European home game in '96. But there was but the Borussia Dortmund one, I remember being kind of excited by, even though I didn't know a lot about them. And then fast forward to us signing Paul Lambert from Dortmund, and I always remember seeing the footage of Paul Lambert walking around it would have been the Westfalenstadion at the time, I think, and they were all singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," and that as a wee guy, that just blew me away. That it was like another team singing our song. I know it's Liverpool's song as well, but for as a kind of parting of the ways for Lambert leaving. So there was that connection, and then when I went to live in France for uni, we all had to, my course, we had to live in France for 6 months, and I met these German guys in my course, and I mean, my social circle at that point was Bathgate and Edinburgh. There was not even Glasgow. I didn't know anybody from Glasgow, so to meet guys from, you know, Wiesbaden and Dortmund and Munich was like really exotic to me. That was like meeting these people from places I'd never been to. At that point, I'd never been to Germany. So, but one of them, Damien, he was a massive Dortmund fan, and in the last week or so of the four of us went to see Milan against Udinese in the last game of the season at San Siro. So we drove along from Nice to Milan, saw AC Milan play Udinese, Bierhoff, Shevchenko, Leonardo. Like,
he was some player.
Again, being a wee guy, I was 20, and being a wee guy in the San Siro, having watched Gazzetta Football Italia, as we spoke about the other week, was amazing for me. But on sort of partnering with Damien, I was like, here, I want to give you a strip. So I gave him that strip in long sleeve, which was mine at the time. I've since got another one at some point over the years, but the one I gave him was a long sleeved strip of that, and he was totally blown away because he loved Celtic. Like, in the same way that I had a kind of fascination with Borussia Dortmund, he loved Celtic. And when I got home, maybe month after I got home, after living in Nice, I got a package from him, which was a cassette of Borussia Dortmund fan chants. So it was like recorded fan songs from the games, as well as some mad like German Europop dance songs that incorporated Borussia Dortmund.
In the match playlist.
Party Time von BVB is one that I remember. I've still got the tape. And
is it better than the Celtic rap though, JP?
I think it's on a par. And then he sent me like a patch. You know, Germans like having patches in the back of denim jackets.
Yeah.
Big circle badge, the Borussia Dortmund badge. So I've still got that. And he sent me that scarf as well.
Brilliant.
And I've just always kind of since then been like, if we ever get Dortmund, I'll move heaven and earth to go. Unfortunately, heaven and earth costs a lot of money, and I got to hold my hands up and just say I can't afford it. It's one of those ones where just like the trip comes along, you have to be like, right, sensible about things. I need to screw the nut and not put myself into financial bother to go on a football trip for a couple of days. I know. It's just annoying. It's just like if it was a wee bit further down the line than this fixture, I would have gone. And I know some people that are going, very envious, because it's one of those ones where, as I said to my mate last night, that we better get them again while I'm alive, because look at the odds. I mean, we were talking about it before we came on here. The last time we played them was 92.
Yep.
Yes, and the odds are lessened even more so because of the competition now, and you can only draw a team home or away. So we need to hopefully draw them again and then also draw them away. And I just think that watch this. We'll get in the Champions League next season and draw them again. And
you'll get there, JP.
Yeah.
This is the thing. Couple of things spring into mind when you're talking about that. Is the first one being in a hotel foyer in Cluj and getting to talk to a big fella from, I think it was the Outer Hebrides, and he was like, "I've never seen you kicking about in a European away day." That was the kind of thing. I was like, I don't get on very many of them, but I've got huge respect for the amount of people, JP, who go to all of them.
There'll be people going by all means of transport. I mean, I did have a look into it, but even the sort of difficult ways of getting there or giving yourself an extra.
Because you often find a way, because you're good at travel, because of
I'm
your
not
job.
really that good at travel. I make myself good at travel to go to do these things, because I don't really like flying. I've never been a fan of it since I was a wee guy, but it's like anything. You're never going to see anywhere if you don't push the boat out. And there's Eurostar that can be used as well, but geez, even Eurostar is not cheap these days. It doesn't come cheap, but I obviously, despite my affection for Borussia Dortmund, I 100% want us to go over there and do it. It would be unbelievable. It's a big ask of the club, but then you see the recent result, and makes you kind of think, well, maybe.
Is this year the year? Why not? You've got to dream. We're dreamers. That's what being a football fan's all about, JP. And as the fixture list says, yeah, we've got Borussia Dortmund away. It's not one of the fixtures that I'm looking at when I'm looking at those 8 ties that I'm thinking, right, we can get a point or we can get 3 points. It's not one. Does that make it a bit of a free hit? Well, the one thing I don't want the reverse of that. I don't want us to be on the end of an absolute scalping. So I think it's important to focus on Borussia Dortmund, tie it into what's happening this weekend with St Johnstone, but also have a wee look back at some of the games, because coming through myself, and I've said this many, many times, Celtic did not, concern anybody when it came to European football during my formative years. So going to my first game in 1987, the Tommy Burns testimonial against Liverpool, and thinking that winning doubles was the norm, and then obviously going into a period of 9 years after that where it wasn't as easy as it seemed in that centenary season. But we did play Borussia Dortmund, and we played them in Europe. And I'm just having a look to see. The first game was at Celtic Park. We beat them 2-1. And I always remember that game because it was Murdo McLeod playing for Borussia Dortmund. And he was a player, obviously, who had just left Celtic in the pre-season. And he played both at Celtic Park and in Germany. And he spoke about it when we talked to him on This Is Acsom, and the fact that over in Germany, the Celtic fans were chanting his name, JP. And it's that you can have an affinity with European clubs without supporting them. And obviously, once they face Celtic, then all bets are off. So the Celtic goal scorers, Andy Walker and Derek White, scored in the 89th minute after they had equalised. So we go into the second leg 2-1 up. And the Celtic team that night, here we go, reminiscing about the centenary season, mate. Alan McKnight was in goals. Remember, Pat Bonner had an issue with his eye and an issue with his back, which forced him to miss the Scottish Cup final that season. Chris Morris, Roy Aitken, Derek White, Anton Rogan, Billy Stark, Peter Grant, Paul McStay, Tommy Burns, Mark McGee and Andy Walker. Archdeacon came on for Burns, and on the bench, unused subs were Bonner, Pierce O'Leary, Tony Shepherd and Dougie Maguire. So that was the Celtic side at home. And then we go away from home and they beat us 2-0 and bounce us out. And at that time, was there not in fact, it was actually the next time we faced them in the 90s that you were talking about earlier, where they beat us home and away. So the home leg, they beat us 2-1, and you'll remember Jerry Craney scored the goal. And then away from home, they beat us 1-0, and it was that brilliant striker, Stefan Chapuisat, who was just class, wasn't he?
Swiss.
Yeah, Swiss centre forwards, brilliant player. But I always remember this game, and I was saying this to you before we came on. The Celtic team was Pat Bonner, Mark McNally, Tom Boyd, Peter Grant, Tony Mowbray, Gary Gillespie, Brian O'Neill, Paul McStay, Stuart Slater, Jerry Craney, and John Collins. Charlie Nicholas came on for Jerry Craney. This was one of the featured games on the Celtic collection video, the short-lived 4 volumes of the Celtic collection, which was the brainchild of Terry Cassidy, and I've got all 4 of the videos on the shelves behind me. But Stuart Slater was immense in Germany. He was brilliant, absolutely tremendous. Kind of ran the show kind of thing, and he was obviously a bit of a flop. So we're looking at that and we're saying, well, isn't it time that we got a result against Borussia Dortmund? 4 games, they've won 3 of them, we've won 1, 1987. Why not?
It's set up to be a great game regardless. It's 2 teams that haven't faced each other in European competition, and it always brings a bit of a kind of excitement and freshness to the fixture. It's the tie that I wanted. When you asked me who I wanted that day, the draw was made, I went Dortmund away. 100%. That's what you want. It's just going to be a bit tough watching it in a pub rather than the Signal Iduna Stadium, which is 81,000 capacity. Like that's got to be one of the biggest that we've played in, up there with the Bernabeu and the new camp. So it's definitely one to look forward to. I hope that we give ourselves a good platform to go there by getting a result on Saturday night. It's a bit of a weird kick-off time, it being late Saturday night, but
and it's obviously been an amended kick-off time. We had an event booked for several months at Gracie's, which sold out ages ago. So obviously we're looking at the scheduling of that. If anybody's got tickets, I will be emailing you with further details about timings, etc. in relation to that, because we'll have the game on the big screens to start off with, and then we'll take it from there. But when we're looking at things like Arnie Engels playing in the Bundesliga and having played at that stadium, and not being overwhelmed by it, JP, does that come into Brendan's thinking when he's picking his team? He might have had Engels in the starting 11 anyway.
I would expect so, yeah. I wonder if he'll play him both games, like play him on Saturday and then on Tuesday, because he obviously did get, 20 minutes against Falkirk, but you want to keep him ready to sort of spring into action. So to have him wrapped up on Saturday may not be the right idea. Some people might disagree with that and say rest him, there's no need, play Bernardo or whatever, but I don't know. I think Brendan Rodgers, he takes the league very seriously. I highly doubt it'll be a sort of skeleton team on Saturday. I would imagine it'll be the strongest team that he can put out. Would you agree?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about was this guy here, Cameron Carter-Vickers. Now, this is an image that was taken yesterday by a good pal of mine, Canon Brian Gibbons, who I got to know when I was writing the biography of Neely Mockin. You might be thinking, all right, it's a picture of him at Lennox Town. But if I remove the banner, what you see is he's wearing the moon boot on the left foot, still wearing that moon boot. Apparently, he was spotted going to the game at the weekend in the moon boot. And I know that obviously it's all about recuperation, taking the pressure off, allowing him still to walk, JP, so that there's no stiffness there, but to give him that extra support. So I'm looking at that picture. That was yesterday. We've got the gate. I don't know if it was maybe the team lineup that was getting photographed, something like that, yesterday at Lennox Town. So I would be amazed if he starts.
Or he's doing a John Kerry and just cutting about in his full Celtic for all that.
He's maybe gone to the airport. But I don't think he'll be playing at the weekend. So, I seen this yesterday. It was in a collection of photos that Brian had put up, and I thought to myself, all right, that doesn't look good. There's obviously an issue there, and he's had surgery already, but the surgery was on his knee, wasn't it? Wasn't it on his ankle? So, yes, that's a wee bit of concern, and I don't think he'll play. So that's my first question to you, right? You're going into that game. We've already seen the pictures of Kasper Schmeichel with the gloves sewed up, and a picture of him with the glove off, and his fingers are taped together. Maybe, I don't know, he's maybe not broken his finger, but there's an injury there of some description. Interestingly, it's on his left-hand side, which is where he seemed to struggle at the weekend. So Schmeichel will play because he's played with that injury. So there's no doubt in my mind he's going to play. Back four, Alistair Johnston's been rested. No doubt these are going to be the questions that Brendan Rodgers is asked tomorrow in relation to the injury concerns. So there's a question mark around Alistair Johnston. There's a question mark around Carter-Vickers. Greg Taylor, like you say, came in and showed you just how influential he is to the team. Scales was rested. How do you line up at the back? That's my first question.
Well, Schmeichel, Taylor, Scales, Alistair Johnston, and then there's the big question mark about who slots in there. I mean, do you play Trusty on his wrong side? Is that a possibility? I don't know. He went with Welsh on Sunday. Nawrocki is he got 10 minutes or something like that on Sunday. So I don't. That is a really big question mark. I genuinely don't know. I think if I was to be forced for an answer, I'd say it'd probably be Welsh.
Well, every one of them should be able to slot in. This is where you want to get to that point where, right, if it's Kyogo or Ida, you're quite happy with both of them depending on opposition. I can see why you would choose one over the other. If it's a midfielder and Hatate drops out because he wants to play Bernardo and Dortmund, I get all that. But the defence is slightly different for me. And I think there is a drop-off with some of the names you've mentioned, right? Now, Trusty can play on the right, but as you say, he's more suited and he's more natural on his left. I would still play him. Now, it's not a massive dig at Welsh. I just don't think he's fast enough with the transition. He seems to always take that extra touch. JP's got that habit of rolling his foot over the ball where that could be the pass. It's always roll the foot over the ball so I can, attack this on my right foot rather than just make the pass. And the pass could be up the left wing rather than turning onto your right and then looking for an option there. So I think Trusty starts for me. And I think that if you're going to buy a player for £6 million, 11 million with Engels, you're buying that standard of player to try and make an impression in Europe. So get them bedded in where the opportunities arise. And if Cameron Carter-Vickers' injury's taken a wee while longer to recover, then I would put him in. So my back four would be similar to yourself. Hopefully Johnson's fit. Left back Taylor, Schmeichel in goals, of course, Scales and Trusty. I think that's my defence. That's how I would approach that. Let us know in the comments if you would agree, disagree, or otherwise. And let's get some of these comments in. We've got Paddy Lavery diving in, as always. Brilliant to see you. Jerry Smith as well. Good afternoon to you. Jungle Lion reckons we play our strongest side on Saturday. And I get that. I think it's a good discussion to have. You play your strongest side, however, and you might come away with another niggle here or there. And that's where, your squad depth really is coming into focus. And I think there's some areas of the squads where you're quite happy that you've got good backup, and there's others not so much. Here we go. Magnet67, always good to see you on the YouTube. Afternoon, Acsom team. It'll be back to playing against a low-block Scottish Catenaccio. Catenaccio loosely translates to doorbolt, the lock, back door. At St Johnstone on Saturday, I expect someone who can speak better Italian will come in and correct me on that. A nice early goal will sort that out, though. We were talking, Callum McGregor yesterday was talking about that last game at McDermott Park in December. It was a tough one, JP, and it probably took a Joe Hart save and then the resulting counter-attack to make it 3-1 to make us relax a wee bit on that occasion. And McGregor was talking about Brendan Rodgers at halftime and his rage and the fact he'd never seen him over both spells so angry with the side. There's a meticulous approach that Rodgers has, but I find it quite refreshing that there's also that anger and that aggression, because you know what, it just shows that he's human, and he got a reaction from it.
He certainly did, and it was much needed. And you think back to the Neil Lennon Kilmarnock game as well, where I don't know. I think you must have spoken to the ex-player.
I asked Charlie. Who else? Joe Ledley. I asked Joe Ledley about that game as well.
What did they say? Did they say he was raging, or did they say
right?
It was
That's a brilliant question. That's a great question, because I hadn't even thought about this. So this is a game where we go in 3-0 down at Rugby Park.
Mm-hmm.
It's Neil Lennon's first full season in charge. So he came in as an interim boss for 9 games, I think, when Mowbray got sacked. Lost one of them, unfortunately, to Ross County in the Scottish Cup semi. So this is, he's starting to assemble his team.
Horrible day, that.
It was horrendous. Aye. Craig Brewster playing up front for Ross County at the age of 47 or something, and they beat us. We've got Robbie Keane. Oh my word, it was shocking. So we go into this season and he's starting to assemble his team, like some of the guys I've named there. I think Charlie McGrew was his first signing, wasn't he? But we didn't want to announce it because he was a free signing, so we didn't want to announce him. We wanted some razzmatazz in first. But
it's like stopping to wish people happy birthday if we haven't signed anybody, like just in case you get a barrage of grief.
Oh man! At some point, football clubs will just deploy some kind of AI program to deal with their social media, right? So that they didn't have to get the flack, or a human certainly doesn't. But I asked Ledley and Charlie Mulgrew about this, and they said Lennon was not showing any kind of fury or anger or any of that at half time, but he got them all sat down, and I think his change in demeanour probably got them all to tune in.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just very, very much basically saying, you've got 45 minutes to save this, because if you don't save it, I'm gone. And they reacted. And if you watch it, I mean, coming back 3 each, who scored for Kelly? It was Heffernan, I think, the Irish guy. Sure, he scored 2 or 3 for them. And obviously we came back. It was a great comeback, and we celebrated. And then it gives you that wee jolt and then that momentum, doesn't it? But apparently he did not give the old hairdryer treatment, JP.
Well, maybe he's picked that up as a tactic from somebody, from maybe a Gordon Strachan or a Martin O'Neill. I mean, there's no way you're going to be Neil Lennon and not have made mental notes about what to do in certain scenarios. So maybe it was something from the school of Martin O'Neill or Gordon Strachan, or who knows. He played under other managers as well, did he not? Who did he play under? Dario Gradi?
Dario Gradi at Crewe. I'm not sure who his Man City boss would have been. I'd need to check that one. But then obviously
Dario Gradi was like the sort of fabled genius of English football, wasn't he? Like the conveyor belt of players that came out of Crewe were substantial. There was a lot that came. I remember playing Championship Manager, and the early days, and most of the crew team were always really highly rated, including Neil Wennon.
Yeah.
Sort of around about the mid to late 90s. But Neil Wennon obviously dealt with that situation as he did. Brendan Rodgers dealt with it was a bit of a stormy waters at that point. Everybody there was a lot of question marks. People on here, I remember hearing certain unnamed individuals kind of going for the manager in quite a strong fashion, saying that he wasn't interested and everything else. It wasn't just the media that were saying that. There was a lot of Celtic fans saying there's something wrong here. He's not interested. He's not getting what he wants or what he needs. And that's on Celtic. If the transfer window was so bad last summer, it's not on Brendan Rodgers, really, is it? It's kind of on Celtic, and we know that a lot of those signings were lined up before Brendan Rodgers came in, and maybe it was a case of, well, it's either these guys or nothing, potentially. You think that's what it was?
I just think that summer transfer window, Brendan Rodgers was almost in an impossible situation, right? And this isn't behind hindsight. I think, this has developed since last summer, whereby initially he's taken ownership of the players, isn't he? And then there was that interview where he said, I get presented with players and I develop them and I work with them. So at that point, I don't think because of the relationship that you had with Celtic support and the way that you'd left first time round, JP, you couldn't turn around and straight off the bat start moaning about the recruitment process again. I do think there was an issue with, and I'm not going to say hoodwinkery. I think what happened was we sold them the fact that we had signed the likes of Kyogo and Matt O'Reilly and Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers and Jota. And if you see that as a presentation of, you're going, wait a minute, that's a good run. It's a good run of signings. That what they didn't show them was the poor run of signings since the head of recruitment had come in Mark Lobel, whereby he can't take credit for the legacy signings of Carter-Vickers and Jota, who had already been at the club and obviously we turned temporary into permanent. But when you're looking at the players, who gets a pass? Aaron Moy? Nah, you're not telling me that wasn't an Ange signing, right? So I think, not hoodwinkery, but I think they've sold them. We've got the recruitment strategy completely sorted since the last time you were here. But very quickly, he's looked at the players and he's thought, right, Tillio's not good enough. Lagerbelt's not good enough, and he's gone through them all to the point where the mere mention of any of these guys, you're thinking, right, how many of them are going to be salvaged from that transfer window? Palmer started at the weekend. Jan came on and I thought looked positive, but they're not convincing me that they've been good signings yet. Then you're looking at Dabrowski. Who knows? He could be another Simunovic, whereby he doesn't play many games now. But it was a big risk to spend that money when you look at the lack of football he had played when we signed him. And then some of the other guys will not have a career at Celtic, So I think there was a wee bit.
You also think about what Joe Hart said in that interview recently, where he was asked about how he was in that first 6 months, and he didn't really impose his own management style, or
he never stamped it, did he? Never stamped his authority.
But maybe he felt that he didn't have not the right to, but maybe he just didn't want to be that guy that puts people's noses out of joint straight away. Like if he'd been honest, like Martin O'Neill with Raphael Scheidt, for example, where it's like, you and I have got a lot in common. It's like I'm 40 whatever and I can do everything that you can do, like that. I mean that's just an absolute evisceration of someone. I don't know.
I liked the story, which turned out to be false, because I asked him that O'Neill wore the 31 as a squad number because he took it off Raphael Scheidt, saying there's more chance of me getting a game than him. That wasn't true. The 31 actually came from underneath a miniature of the European Cup that they got after winning it twice in a row. So all the players got a wee miniature European Cup. They were in a box, and underneath there was a numbered sticker on each of the boxes, and his was 31. So he saw it as a lucky kind of charm. So every time you saw him with the 31, that was because of this wee sticker underneath his trophy. But you're right, he did eviscerate him. You know what I think it was? Brendan Rodgers took over a treble-winning side. That's the first thing. So you think to yourself, right, the guy before me must have been doing something all right, and the guys that are on the park must be doing something all right. And then he's been sold this dummy, if you like, in terms of the transfer strategy. And it was commented on when he met with Callum McGregor, and Callum was saying, listen, some of the guys we've been bringing in, different level of quality. So you can understand why there'd be a level of trust there with the recruitment team. Halfway through the season, JP, he's probably looked at it and go, no, I'm going to have become far more involved here. And I think that's what Joe Hart's talking about, where he's basically grabbed the steering wheel and thought, right, I'm driving now, kind of thing, right? And at that point, he's had these small, trusted core group of players that got us over the line. He has been involved in the signings in January, and then he's been involved in the signings in the summer. So I can understand all the circumstances around it. And what did we lose? We lost a League Cup as a result of it, didn't we? So that's why I thought at the weekend he was going to approach that with a full strength squad, and he didn't. But we got through it, and he took it on the chin. He took it on the chin as well.
By the way, fair play to the Falkirk supporters. To have that amount of away fans in the ground for a Scottish League Cup game was really, really impressive. And it sounds a bit kind of almost patronising to sort of say, "Oh, well done," but it was like a European style away support.
But going from Falkirk to Glasgow is a bit like travelling to Europe. It's like travelling out of your comfort zone.
Well, I mean, I was moonlighting on 20-Minute Tims on Sunday with Melly, and we spoke about my connection to Falkirk just because of my mum, and my mum was from Falkirk. My granddad was from Falkirk. I used to go and watch Falkirk with my pal because I wasn't allowed to go to Celtic Park. I would be at my mum's at the weekend in Falkirk, and I mean, there was no way she would have had me going. I had to thank Martin O'Neill for coming in and changing my mum's opinion on Celtic, because she just absolutely loved Martin O'Neill and became interested. And
you told Martin O'Neill that, didn't you?
Did I? Yeah. I said to him that she just loved him at bits, and as a result was interested in the people that he would speak about. So in post matches, if he was talking about Didier Agathe, she loved Didier Agathe as well, and she would like watch games if they were on the telly and listen to the radio, and she would say to me, "Oh, I heard you on the radio," like singing or whatever. I'm like, very good. but I was thinking back on Sunday to when I used to go to Brockville, but then when Falkirk got promoted in '94, I was in this sort of curious position of like going to watch Falkirk, but it was against Celtic, the first game of the season. Tommy Burns
1-0 Andy Walker.
No, 1-1.
1 each. Who scored for Falkirk? Was it Yogi?
No.
I remember Celtic having the numbers on their sleeves.
That's it. I was going to tell. I wanted to tell you that, given your shirt geekery, but they had numbers on their sleeves and on their shorts still, but it was while they were still fighting that, or we're not wearing it on our backs. And then eventually later that season, I think UEFA insisted that we did it. But there's the ticket, £8.
I love the fact you keep everything, JP. You absolutely do.
It's just in a photo album. Do you know what I mean? It's not as if it's hard to keep it.
I know, but a lot of people don't keep things.
Bees are home sponsor on the back.
Oh, I remember that well. That in fact, that jersey that they had, was it no Hummel? Falkirk. I'm sure it was Hummel, quite loud at the time. By the way, I'm going to digress slightly, but it's not too far from the beaten track. Before I do that, I'm going to bring in Danielle F. Danielle is commenting on the YouTube. We cannot play Carter Vickers if he's still injured on Tuesday. He played in the Hearts 2-0 game at Paradise last season, and he was terrible. He hasn't been great this season, so it's Trusty or Novroski for me. Absolutely get that. Gordon Coney, this is why we shelled out £6 million for Trusty to step in when he's needed. Yes, and if you're spending that kind of money, then he should be able to step in. Ian Corbett thinks that CCV is definitely out for Saturday, so not sure if he will be fine for Tuesday. We shall wait and see. And Andy Lee says, I'll be resting the pair of them, Carter Vickers and Alistair Johnston, and maybe give Ida a start. Ida played, for me, I thought he was excellent at the weekend. And it also gave us an opportunity to rest Kyogo. Right, yesterday, JP, this is Acsom was filmed once again at Barras Art and Design in the heart of the Barrowlands. And our special guest, because this is a Celtic state of mind. This is why we set it up all those years ago, 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, to talk to people with a Celtic state of mind, regardless of which part of society they come from, what their employment status is and their chosen profession, etc. And our latest guest was none other than Jamesy Cotter, Tony Roper. Right now, Tony Roper's one of the guys that, he's just omnipresent for me growing up, right? So I always remember, and I've spoken to Phil Differ about this actually in one of the early interviews that we did. Check it out on the YouTube channel. Only an Excuse. Let's remember what the influence that Only an Excuse actually had in its early kind of years. Yes, we know what it became as that kind of New Year thing that wasn't very funny, didn't concentrate on the football. But in its early years, it was almost, would it be right to say it was groundbreaking? I mean, a comedy show about Scottish football with the impressions and everything else. And I remember it was on the radio. And what they did is they changed it into a cassette and they started selling the cassettes to such a degree, JP, that it ended up in the NME indie charts. The Only an Excuse cassette broke into the charts, right? And Tony Roper was a massive part of that, writing with Phil Differ, and obviously Jonathan Watson was part of that team. Don't think he'll be on this as Acsom somehow. But I remember all that, and I remember all these wee daft things like the Chick Young, impression and all this kind of stuff, right? So what I will say on that point is that tune in on Friday night, because Tony Roper just like that breaks into Danny McGrain, and it's unreal. We're all just like literally belly laughing for 5 minutes, and he becomes Danny McGrain. Absolutely, he's a genius. He's a comic genius. And then I got to know that brilliant New Year thing that was always on the telly called The Steamy, that my mum loves, right, was written by Tony Roper. I'm going, this guy's a legend. He's so talented.
I didn't know that. I knew of The Steamy before my time, but I didn't know
that. Well, the thing with The Steamy is it always seemed to be on at New Year. It was always in the programme listings. And Mark, oh dear, loved it. Still does. Has the VHS tape somewhere. And so Tony Roper wrote that, right? And then you move into things like, right, Naked Video, City Lights, Ramsey Nesbitt.
Oh,
right?
I watched all of them.
No, brilliant. Like a golden era of Scottish comedy, wasn't it?
Yeah, City Lights with Gerard Kelly and it was
Andy Gray. Remember, big Andy Gray was in that, wasn't he?
Chancellor, yeah. I mean, I was a wee guy watching that. Like, I must have been about 8, 9 years old, but it was just something. I mean, I was obsessed with television when I was wee. I would tape all sorts of like just regular programs, like I guess like Naked Video, The Word, as I said to Naked Video was amazing as well. Like, it was just something really taboo about it, because it was kind of a bit risky, and it was after the watershed, and I'd have to stay up in my bedroom to watch it on my black and white TV.
I love all that, because around about that time, and the dates might actually be quite far from each other. I'm not sure. I would also watch things like the Young Ones, and that was kind of like my humour, right? So you did like a bit of risky humour, and I loved all that kind of stuff. So to be in the same room as him yesterday was just, I was blown away by that. He's now 84 years of age, right? 84. He kind of got into the entertainment business quite late on.
Wow.
And he was talking about the fact he was born into a Celtic family. His family, the Ropers, they ran pubs and fruit shops and florists and all that kind of stuff, JP. And he was born into this existence of being in a Celtic. Many of us, but Celtic were rubbish because it was the 1950s and we were rotten. So I started talking to him about Neely Mockin, the Coronation Cup. He was at the game. Celtic v Hibs, 1953. He was there. And he said that's when he actually fell in love with Celtic, was that match, because we won something, right? And then I'm going, oh, Neely Mockin, I love Neely, Pally with his son and stuff. He's going, I shared a room with Neely when we went to Ireland under Liam Brady. So obviously, he's narrated some of these DVDs and all that behind me. And he did the Celts and Seville stage play and all this kind of stuff. An absolute wealth of knowledge, information, and talent, JP. The laughs are absolute natural. He tells a story about Neil Lennon. Honestly, get the hankies ready for that one, right? But did you know this? He was in cult British movie The Wicker Man. No. Tony Roper was in that film,
I did not know that, no.
I thought this might appeal to you. Right? Sorry, ladies and gents. I'm going to digress for a few moments just to talk about this, because up to now it's about Roper, the Celtic fan, the comedian, the genius. So he's in that movie, right, with Christopher Lee, Edward Woodward, Britt Ekland. I love it. It's a tremendous film. The remake, not so much. And it's on a little Scottish island and all that. For anyone who's not watched it, go and check it out. Cult classic. He plays a postman. So Tony Roper's in that film. He plays a postman, and he shared the trailer with Edward Woodward. So we're talking about this off tape.
The Equalizer.
The Equalizer, yeah, with the leather gloves. He said, I'll tell you a secret about Edward Woodward. Bald as a coot, not a hair in his head, wore a wig. I'm like, how do you know that? I shared the trailer with him. So it was just brilliant. And he was, unfortunate not to meet Britt Ekland on the set. But there you go, Tony Roper. Honestly.
I had my own Wickerman moment on the island of Tyree. Because I think I've told you this before, but when I arrived, I just went to Tyree post-lockdown as something to do. I'd never been before, and I just needed to get out of Glasgow. And I had a Celtic sticker on my case, an Odsonne Edouard Celtic sticker. Just put something in your case so when it's coming round the carousel, it's definitely yours if it happens to look like someone else's. So if I see the Odsonne Edouard sticker, I'm like, that's my case.
But you might get a baggage handler in behind that wee bit that might not take too kindly to that sticker.
That's a good point. Never thought of that. Might need to remove it or change it up. But I went for a surfing lesson, and then I was cycling from the surfing lesson looking for this beach. And I'm just cycling along a road, and it's so flat. Tyree's absolutely flat and a pancake. And a guy pulls up alongside me on a bike. I'd hired a bike, and he's just cycling next to me, and he's like, "All right, how's it going?" And I was like, "All right." Guy was like, maybe, I don't know, in his 50s or something like that. And he goes, what brings you here? And I was like, I just decided to come. He lived there, and I was like, I just decided to come, never been here before, blah, blah, blah. And he was, "You the laddie that arrived with the Celtic sticker in his case yesterday?" And I went, "Aye." And he went, "Oh yeah, you were spotted." I went, "How did you know that?" And he went, "Oh, you were spotted." And it had gone round the island's like massive Rangers. There's like Union Jacks with 55 on them and all that nonsense. And the guy's like, "You were spotted." And I suddenly felt like very kind of vulnerable. I'm going to get taken out in the middle of the night or something and flogged or something like that. Because
that's spooky, by the way. Is there anybody in the comments from Tyree who is a Celtic fan?
Well, there is, and his name's Angus John McKechnie. And he added me as a friend on Facebook because he was like, "Oh, you and I are the only Celtic fans in the island." He's the bus driver. He just drives.
The only Tim in the village.
If you want to get anywhere in Tyree, and he'll come and pick you up. Yeah.
So you had like just a wee sticker on your case.
Yeah. And
someone just basically from nowhere is cycling next to you. He's like, "You're the guy with the Celtic sticker." Oh, dearie me. Dearie me.
Pretty. I mean, he was perfectly sound, but at the same time, you're like, wow, that's what gets around like an island.
That is bizarre.
Less than 24 hours. I only arrived like the previous night, and it was lunchtime on the following day. So
big shout out to the Tyree CSC. Get in touch. Danny boy, the strongest team on Saturday, says Danny, but if we're comfortable after half-time, bring on some of the more gifted players off for safety's sake, a wee bit like against Falkirk. In relation to Saturday, then, we're up against St Johnstone. What we do know about them, JP, is that Scott Brown won't be their manager. So he's removed himself from the race. And we spoke about it yesterday, the Falkirk scenario with regards to they're probably better than 2 or 3 teams in the Premiership right now. Whether or not they've got an infrastructure that's better is to be debated, and that's something that any prospective manager would need to do their due diligence on. Some managers, I think, are very much like they'll take the first job that comes along in the top division because they think the opportunity is not going to arise again. It's a bold move by Bruni, but I'm not surprised.
No, I just very quickly read a bit about it before coming to speak to you, and I just the chat was that it was because they were going to be speaking to 2 other candidates, so he was kind of thinking, oh well, if I'm one of 3, then I'm not going to leave what I've got at Ayr United to put that at risk. So if I'm not the outstanding candidate, so I don't know if there's other names being mentioned.
Yeah, Aberdeen's
Ian Murray's one, isn't he?
Coach, and there was someone else, the manager or the coach of Larne, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking to. So, yeah, fair enough for Bruni, by the way, because I just think that he's gone into Ayr United and he has spoken about how the structure of the club is there and how he's working really well with the people that are running the show. Ayr, they've shown him a wee bit of confidence. I think what he's done is he's repaid them with the results. So, you know, I think the ideal job for Scott Brown probably isn't St Johnstone, to be honest. I'm not saying it's a poison chalice, but I don't think that's the kind of job for Bruni. There's going to be managerial changes in the Scottish Premiership throughout the season. Obviously, Hearts now looking for a new manager, and there'll be a few others, I'm pretty sure.
I think maybe as well, just leaving a team at this point in his career, but leaving a club. Has he got that much stock to be able to jump from one stone to another stone at this point in the season? Like, it's about the end of October. Maybe a manager at his level, at his stage in his career, would be better moving in the summer in the pre-season, where he's going to start afresh rather than having to jump in and then correct someone else's mistakes, i.e. Craig Levine's.
Yeah, as Sharp says, no, you're right, because then also people don't forget that, do they? People don't forget making moves like that. The Super Jays will possibly get a wee bounce after binning Levine, so we need to field a strong side, he says. And Joe Hampton also comes in to say, Brendan is always ahead of the game and he'll do what he has to be done to get us through this next week. Yeah, I'm sure he will. Joe, the other thing I was going to bring to view, because it's you, JP, and I know that you appreciate these kinds of things, this has been confirmed as being the, not by Celtic yet, but by a good source, that this will be the, that fourth jersey that we bring out every season now that never gets worn.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's confirmed. So what we had so far, we had the Irish Heritage jersey, which was an absolute cracker and deserved to be worn. Then we had the hoops, remember, with the white-out badge, which, again, beautiful. This, I can't see any connection to Celtic with this. I mean, it looks like a kind of 1990s era Hibs goalie top when they were with Aberdeen, Adidas rather. I don't see any connection to Celtic with this, JP. I'm not sure on it. What's your take as a kit connoisseur?
I could see Alan McKnight in that for some reason.
Aye. Good point.
Do you know the thing I'm disappointed about? I'm disappointed that our contract with Adidas is coming to an end, and that might be the only Celtic strip made in this entire 4-year deal. If indeed it's not renewed, that's the only strip that's going to appear with a trefoil, the Adidas trefoil in the.
I know.
Breast. And you're like,
and the unbroken 3 stripes down the sleeves as well.
Yeah, and why does it have to be a long sleeve only? Like, that's clearly going to be long sleeve only. You're not going to get that short sleeved.
No, I mean that's a goalie top, right?
I mean,
that looks like a goalie top.
It does look like a goalie top, but it's obviously a kit. I mean, I've got a Man United like a treble kit that they made, and they only made that long sleeved. It was like a tribute kit to the 99 home strip, but again, only long sleeved. But it's just, I don't understand why we've not had a trefoil Celtic kit, even just the third kit or something like that, why they couldn't put it on it. And if that is going to be the only one, it's a little bit disappointing, I have to say.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? Because I think that you and I both got quite excited. I've got no skin in the game when it comes to Man United, but I loved the Man U Adidas Stone Roses collaboration. And I just think that there's so much scope for Celtic to do something similar. Smell the Glove is on the fence. He says it looks absolutely bogging. Jean-Paul II says Zaire 74. Jerry Smith, not for me. Michael McDonald would prefer the proper badge. I'm definitely with you on that one, Michael. I like the full colour crest. Will McMillan, don't think that shirt will ever get worn. It won't. It's one of the commemorative
tops. It'll just be the top, won't it?
Yeah. Aye, that's right. One of the commemorative fashion items. Plunge McNugget looks like a goalie top. And Kenny Todd comes in on the Facebook to say that was an Old Island top. I need to have a look through them, actually. So anyway, one final thing from you, JP. Give me a prediction for the weekend. I know you love doing it.
You know I don't. Before I do that, I just wanted to mention I was up your way on Monday morning in Cardenden. How far is that from you?
10-minute drive. Tony Roper lived in Cardenden when he worked at Bow Hill Pit at the age of 15. And,
Really?
he would walk past John Thompson's grave every day going to his work.
Well, I was there for pretty sad reasons on Monday morning. Guy I used to work with at HSBC Bank in Edinburgh for many years. Guy called Andy Duncan, unfortunately passed away a couple of weeks ago. 49, like no age at all, and yeah, really, really sad. And I went along to the funeral on Monday, and the priest that served the mass, whose name escapes me, but he said he wasn't allowed on the Joe Rafferty CSC, which is the bus that Andy would get, because he thought that they would have to behave themselves too much if there was a priest in the bus. So he's like, I happily get the John Thompson bus, which must run from somewhere in and around there. And yeah, it was just I went to Bow Hill Cemetery, and the church was St Ninian's, and Andy was a great guy, and I met him in a back street in Madrid, coming out of a pub. I just bumped into him and his brother, and I appreciate that. And I don't know if people are watching that knew him or anything like that, but if you got a hug for Andy, you knew about it. He's just a very, very warm guy. Never had a bad word to say about anybody. And I always enjoyed talking to him about Celtic, just the same way as I enjoy talking to you about it. I mean, I would have these type of conversations on the regular when I worked at the bank, because the job that I did allowed me to walk around the whole building, and I wasn't on the phones like everybody else. I was doing a bunch of admin, boring stuff, but I got away with talking to people a lot. And I would when I got to Andy's desk, he was a team leader, I would invariably sit and talk to him for 15, 20 minutes about the weekend, about football, and he loved music as well. So there you go, an absolute shoe-in to talk to somebody about that. So yeah, I just wanted to say something about him, because he was a really, really great guy, and I'll miss him. He sat above me in the North Stand, so I would sometimes meet him in the corner of the North Stand in the Jock Stein, that corner before you go under the tunnel. Bumped into him there a good couple of times as well. And
the thing is with this, JP, is Celtic brings so many people together, doesn't it? You know what I mean? And it's incredible how the kind of positive impact that this club has on bringing people together. So thoughts and prayers with Andy and his friends and his family, and obviously you're amongst that. And it seems as though there's a few people in the comments that might even know him.
The priest did say...
Who was the priest? Was it Canon Brian Gowans, the guy that gave me that photo? Well,
he's involved. He said during the mass that because the collection was for the Celtic Foundation. And he said that he's heavily involved in the Celtic Foundation.
I bet it's Brian. Do
you think?
It could well be, yeah.
And then and then he said at the end, he said something really lovely to Andy's partner Caroline and his brother Brian. He said, if you want to know what Andy meant, take a look around and have a look at how full the church was, because it was packed, and I thought that was a really nice touch to say that. So yeah, but I don't want to start crying on here, but
I know, JP, it's difficult, mate. I'm just trying to think, because Brian Gowans, he was responsible for the service at Neely's funeral back in the day. Is it St Saviour's in Falkirk? And then he's moved up to
St Francis Saviour's.
I think so, yeah.
St Francis Saviour's. That's where my mum and dad got married.
There you go.
Where I was baptised. Aye, and I used to go there regularly.
There's your link. There's your link. But he did move up there. He moved up because we took the wee fella up to see him when he was born as well. I've not seen him for a few years. Good guy. Thomas Davenport. Frankie Miller is the best singer to hail from Glasgow, bar none. I'll tell you the reason I brought this in, right? I love Frankie Miller. Frankie Miller, absolutely a total genius, right? And a good friend of Jimmy Johnston, of course. But I always remember Frankie Miller because of my age as the guy that was in Just a Boys Game, right? Mm-hmm. And it was his one and only role in a movie. And I've always wanted to ask him or someone who knew him. Why? Because he was amazing in it. He was absolutely brilliant, right? And the strangest thing happened, talk about connections, JP, just to leave you with this, because second prize comes in and says Jim Kerr is the best singer for Glasgow. And before you go, I want you to tell me what you think.
It's Just a Boys Game, Peter McDougall.
Yeah, he wrote it, aye.
Aye.
So he wrote it. So going back to Nearly Mocking, we were filming the Nearly Mocking documentary, and Canon Brian, there you go. Every one of them is brilliant. What one of them, Concrete Graveyard or something? What was that one? Top right? Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Billy Connolly, of course. Yes, get it watched. Fantastic. Great collection. And we're talking to, at the time, Father Brian Givens about Nearly Mocking and all the rest of it. And the director of the documentary, which is free to watch on YouTube, by the way, go and check it out, Celtic Smiler, is a guy called Luke Massey. And we were chatting away, and he was like, my dad was pally with Billy Connolly and all that. And I was like, all right. Yeah, he was an actor, Campbell Morrison. Do you know him? I says, no, off the top of my head. So I went home that night and obviously typed him into IMDb, JP. Campbell Morrison, he was in Just a Boys Game. I'm thinking, that was one of my dad's favourite movies, that. Watched the scene that he was in. He's the guy that throws the water over the cubicle and hits the old guy sitting reading his paper, skiving his work. He'll remember the scene. And then, this is the bizarre thing about it. Yesterday, I'm sitting talking to Tony Roper, and Tony tells us that he had a house in Edinburgh, an apartment in Edinburgh, during the Fringe one year, when Billy Connolly was just kind of coming through, and he had a 6-week stint at the Edinburgh Fringe. 6 weeks, does that sound right? It sounds a bit long. At the Edinburgh Fringe, and he stayed and he slept on the couch with Tony Roper. And Billy Connolly and Tony Roper's mate around about that time was Campbell Morrison. So when he mentioned that yesterday, I'm like, I worked with his son on the Nearly Mocking film. So it's a small world of many, many connections, and Celtic binds us together in many ways, JP. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. We are up for a couple of awards. If you want to help us out and add to our evening down in London in November, down at Spurs Stadium, then the link is underneath this video. We're up for Best Podcast and Best Influencer. And hopefully we can see quite a few of you on Saturday night. If not, there are tickets available for Striking and Hartson next month. All the tickets under the video. All that's left for me to say, JP Mason, thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.